Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Narayanaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Narayanaya. Suklambaradhanam Vitnum Sasibannam Chadubhujam Prasannavadanam Dhyaye Sarva Vignopashantaye Ananta Samsara Samudratara Naukaitabhyam Guru Bhakti Dabhyam Vairagya Samrajyada Pujanabhyam Namo Namah Shri Guru Padukabhyam Anjana Nandanam Veeram Janaki Shoganashanam Kabisamakshagantaram Vande Lanka Bhayankaram. Krishnaya Vasudevaya Devaki Nandanaya Cha Nandagopakumaraya Govindaya Namo Namaha. Yadangri Pangeru Harenu Lagnam Nipiyaniram Vimalantarangaha Janami Tattvam Nijamatma Rupam Tam Nomi Narayana Tirthamaryam. Hare Krishna, Guruvayurappa, Narayana, Narayana, Narayana. Namaskaram, all of you. Welcome to the 47th session of Krishna Leela TarangiNi. Just for a recap of the earlier sessions, we saw glimpses of Brahma Vaivarta Purana which highlight the narration of Lord Mahadeva to Goddess Parvati or Durga as to the Radha Tattva and the inseparable concept of Ardhanari Tattva of Radha and Krishna. In our appreciation then, we quickly noted the millennia-old Gita Govindam by Bhakta Jayadeva, who happens to be the first of the three incarnations of Vedavyasa in Kali Yuga, and enjoyed the invocation slokams highlighting the importance of Radha. We also briefly saw through the prism of Brahma Vaivarta Purana the reasons that happenstance brought Radha from Goloka to Bhuloka as the daughter of King Vrishabhanugopa, chieftain in Yadukulam and owner of 1,000,000 cows ruling from Barsana, and to his wife Kirtida, who was known as Kalavati in her previous birth. Vrishabhanu in his previous life was King Suchendra, blessed with a divine boon from Brahma the creator to become the father of Supreme Goddess in Dwapara Yuga. Kalavati, who was the granddaughter of Daksha Prajapati, was abandoned by her husband Suchendra because he took to renunciation of the worldly life, seeking discipleship of sage Agastya. Brahma blessed Kalavati with a boon that she would be born again to join her husband Suchendra in the very next life, and both of them would be blessed with goddess Radha to become their daughter in Bhuloka. The birth details of Radha in Gokulam is somewhat similar to that of Sita's birth details in Ramayana. When Vrishabhanu went to take bath in a pond, he saw a baby girl and a lotus flower in the pond and took her to his home and named her as Radha, because the greatest of goddesses was always an Ayonija, not born to a mortal womb. Towards the end of the session, I briefly mentioned about an article of 1964, which I attempted to present on Purusha and Prakriti Tattva, taking generous help from Mahakavi Bharati's great poetry on Kannan, and about a fictional or imaginative scene which I used to hone in on this particular point. Let me present first in Tamil both the explanation as well as the anecdote, or I would say the fictional tale, followed by a brief English explanation. Bharati's complete understanding of Radha Tattva and her equal importance to Krishna and her Ardhanari Bhava can easily be seen in the poetry that I am going to quote. Dehi mudam dehi Shri Radhe Radhe, Dehi mudam dehi Shri Radhe Radhe, Dehi mudam dehi Shri Radhe Radhe, Dehi mudam dehi Shri Radhe Radhe. Ragasri Jamrite Radhe Radhe, Ragi Mandala Ratna Radhe Radhe, Ragasri Jamrite Radhe Radhe, Ragi Mandala Ratna Radhe Radhe, Bogarati Kodi Tulyam Radhe Radhe, Bhudevi Tapapala Radhe Radhe, Bhudevi Tapapala Radhe Radhe, Dehi Mudam Dehi Shri Radhe Radhe, Veda Maha Mantra Rasa Radhe Radhe, Veda Vidya Vilasini Radhe Radhe, Adi Parashakti Rupa Radhe Radhe, Adhuta Shingaramaya Radhe Radhe, Dehi Mudam Dehi Shri Radhe Radhe, Dehi Mudam Dehi Shri Radhe Radhe. காதலனும் தீவினிலே ராதே ராதே, காதலனும் தீவினிலே ராதே ராதே, அன்று கண்டெடுத்த பெண்மணியே ராதே ராதே, காதலனும் தீவினிலே ராதே ராதே, என்று கண்டெடுத்த பெண்மணியே ராதே ராதே, காதலனும் சோலையிலே ராதே ராதே, காதலனும் சோலையிலே ராதே ராதே, நின்ற கற்பகமம் குந்தருவே ராதே ராதே, மாதரசே செல்வ பெண்ணே ராதே ராதே, உயர்வானவர்கள் இன்ப வாழ்வே ராதே ராதே, காதலனும் தீவினிலே ராதே ராதே, கண்டெடுத்த பெண்மணியே ராதே ராதே. இறை பக்தி என்பது ஒரு அற்புதமான தீவு. அதில் பிரேமை என்கிற ஒரு சோலை. அச்சோலையில் கிருஷ்ண பக்தர்களுக்காக கற்பகமாய் உலவுகின்றாள் ராதை. This is the sentiment of the Tamil song. Bhakti is an indescribably wonderful island within which is an oasis called prema or love. Radha strolls along the oasis like a kalpataru or the desire tree to the true devotees of Krishna, ready to give them anything. இறைவனின் ஆனந்தமான அம்சம்தான் ராதை. ராதையும் கிருஷ்ணனும் நித்திய பெண்மையும் நித்திய ஆண்மையையும் குறிப்பிடுகிறார்கள் அல்லது குறிப்பால் உணர்த்துகிறார்கள். ராதை கிருஷ்ணன் வடிவம் என்பது ஜீவாத்மா பரமாத்மா பிரேமை தத்துவத்தை வெளிப்படுத்துகிறது. In other words, Radha is the incarnation of bliss from the Brahman. Radha and Krishna suggestively represent the eternal manhood and feminine grace. Also, the Jiva Param depicted as Jivan and Brahman. Purushottama is the only man and the Lord. All other Jivatman are just feminine. We have talked about this concept when we discussed a number of Upanishads in the past sessions. The Jivatman that we talked about are the gopis. From the point of view of a Jivatman or gopi, any worship is directed towards the only Natha, and the rest of all around him appear feminine like the gopis that are described in the Purana. The head of those gopis in Goloka was the alter ego of Krishna, as we saw in the last session. Krishna is none else than the Paramapurusha and hence the Uttama Jivan. No wonder that Krishna could not bear Radha's separation, since Radha breathed Krishna at every breath. As I promised earlier in the prior session, here is a fictional largesse, and I dare not call it as an anecdote, as I have no authentic literature for bibliography for such fictional representation. I'll give an informal account in Tamil first and attempt to run a slide of closest translation in English for the benefit of non-Tamil speaking devotees. The fiction goes like this. கோபிகளின் குரல் அழுத்தமாக காதுகளில் விழுந்தது யசோதைக்கு. யசோதை, கண்ணனை தேடுகிறாயா? This was the question from gopis. கொஞ்சம் தயக்கத்துடன் யசோதை சொல்கிறாள், இல்லை. ஆனால் சொன்னவள் சொல்லிக்கொண்டே ஓடுகிறாள். எங்கு ஓடுகிறாள்? ராதையை நோக்கி. கூடவே கோகுலம் அவளோடு கண்ணனை தேடி ஓடியது. யசோதை அங்குமிங்கும் அலைந்து திரிந்து கடைசியில் ராதையிடமே வந்து சேர்ந்தடைந்தாள். கண்ணன் அங்கேயும் இல்லை. கண்ணன் எங்கே என்று தயக்கத்துடன் அரைக்குறையில் ராதையிடம் கேட்டாள். கண்மூடி பிரேம பக்தியில் மதுரமான சிந்தனையில் திளைத்திருந்த ராதை பதில் என்று எதுவுமே சொல்லவில்லை. கண்ணையே திறக்கவில்லை. யசோதைக்கோ ஒரே கோபம். ஆனால் அந்த இடத்தை விட்டு போக முடியவில்லை. ஏனென்றால் கண்ணன் எங்கிருக்கிறான் என்பதை தெரிந்தே ஆக வேண்டும். இருந்தாலும் அடக்கி கொண்டு காத்திருந்தாள். சிறிது நேரம் கழித்து ராதை கண்ணை திறந்தாள். சுய நினைவு வந்தது. யசோதை தன் முன் இருப்பதை பார்த்து பணிவுடன் வணங்கி, அம்மா நீங்களா? இவ்வளவு தூரம் வந்தீர்களே, கண்ணனை தேடியா? கண்ணன் உங்களிடம் வரவில்லையா? வந்திருக்க வேண்டுமே என்று கேட்டாள். தூக்கி வாரி போட்டது யசோதைக்கு. ராதே, கண்ணன் உன்னிடமும் இல்லையா ராதே? உன்னிடம் கண்டிப்பாக இருப்பான் என்றல்லவோ ஓடி வந்தேன் என்றாள் யசோதை. கண்ணன் இந்த கணம் வரை இங்குதான் இருந்தான், இப்போதுதான் சென்றான், நீங்கள் பார்க்கவில்லையா அம்மா என்று கேட்டாள் ராதை. அதற்கு யசோதை, இதுவரையில் நான் அவனை பார்க்கவில்லையே என்றாள் ஆயாசத்துடன். உடனே ராதை, நீங்கள் கண்ணை மூடிக்கொண்டு கண்ணனை நினைத்தால் தக்ஷணமே உடனே அவனை காண்பீர்கள். இதுதான் உபாயம் என்றாள். தயக்கத்துடன் கண்ணை மூடினாள். கண்ணன் அவள் நினைத்த உருவத்தில் யசோதை முன் நின்றான். இந்த கதை பாரதியின் கவிதையை தழுவியது. ராதை தன் அன்பின் பிரேம பக்தியின் ஆற்றலை அவ்விடத்தில் செலுத்தியவுடன் யசோதை தான் தேடி வந்த கண்ணனை தனக்குள்ளேயே கண்டாள். இந்த கதை வேறு எதற்கும் அல்ல. ஆயிரக்கணக்கான கோடிக்கணக்கான வருஷங்கள் தபம் செய்யும் முனிவர்களும் மகரிஷிகளும் கண்ணனை காணும் உபாயம், கடைசி உபாயம் இதுதான். மனப்பூர்வமாக கண்ணை மூடிக்கொண்டு கண்ணா என்று சொன்னால் முன்னே வந்து நிற்பான். We can enjoy a dozen more songs from many great poets, starting with Muthukadu Venkatakavi and following him over the centuries. We will reserve them all for a later session while dealing with Rasa Leela. All of the above and all such references follow the dicta of Bhagavad Gita. Ye yatamam prapatyante tam stataiva bhajamyaham. Mama vartmanu vartante manushyaha partha sarvasakha. I have quoted it so many times. Chapter 4, Sloka 11, Bhagavad Gita. எந்தெந்த வழிமுறைகளில் எல்லாம் மனிதர்கள் என்னிடம் வந்து அடைகிறார்களோ அந்த உபாயத்திலேயே அவர்களை நான் பரிபூர்ணமாக ஏற்றுக்கொள்ளுகிறேன். That is what Krishna said, and that's what happened with Radha or Yashoda or anybody, any gopis. That is what Brahma Vaivarta Purana repeatedly mentioned about the final upaya. One devotee may want Krishna as the supreme master, another as his personal friend, another as his son, and still another as his lover. That is what Bharati said. Kannan en tholan, Kannan en tholi, Kannan en kudandai, Kannan en amma, Kannan en sevagan, Kannan en talaivan, master. Kannanai பலவிதமாக வர்ணித்தான் பாரதி. This is exactly the sentiment from Bhagavad Gita that prompted Bharati to do all those role plays for Kannan. We will now appreciate the Tulasi Mahatmyam as from Brahma Vaivarta Purana. On a botanical note, most of you may be aware that Tulasi is the holy basil plant. Those with large green leaves are known as Shri Tulasi, loosely translated Fortunate Tulasi, or Lakshmi Tulasi. This variety is also known in many parts of India, especially northern parts, as Rama Tulasi or Bright Tulasi. But the Tulasi with the dark green or purple leaves, which are slightly smaller, and purple stem also is called Shyama Tulasi or Dark Tulasi or Krishna Tulasi. Tulasi is often used to connote matchless and is known as Vaishnavi, one belonging to Vishnu, also known as Vishnu Vallabha or beloved of Krishna or beloved of Vishnu. Haripriya, beloved of Vishnu, and also known as Vishnu Tulasi. One argument often mooted is that goddess Lakshmi is identical with Tulasi and hence she is known as Lakshmi Priya. Tulasi is also identified as one of the consorts of Vishnu. Well, most of the riddles and counter stories are very well tagged by Brahma Vaivarta Purana. In one simple song, Tyagaraja Swami explained the most difficult or inexplicable greatness of Tulasamma or Tulasi. Let us listen to that song, a very quick rendition. In the Anupallavi, he says, by nature you are so tranquil and peaceful, and you are so generous. Thereby, you are able to give all your devotees spiritual and temporal blessings. Those who want temporal blessings, they get it. Those who want spiritual blessings and nothing else, they also get it. Because of those qualities, Bhagavan Mahavishnu, he does not even want to dream of separating from you, Tulasamma. It is not a question of is separating. The very thought or even dream of separating from you is not possible for Mahavishnu. That's why he always has to adorn you. You are always on his chest. He doesn't like any prayer, any puja, any offering if it is not supported by Tulasi and if you are not adorning him on his chest. All those greatness that everybody is constantly talking about it. That is why I hold you on my head, because you had already adorned the feet of my Bhagavan, and thereby I have to hold you on top of my head. Tamarasadala Netru, Tyagarajani Mitru, you are the friend of Tyagaraja. Premato Shirumununu Pettu Konnadata. With so much love, I have kept you on top of my head because you have adorned it at the feet of Bhagavan. Why so much importance to Tulasi, which scholars and Acharyas called it to be Mahatmyam? Chapters 14 to 22 of the 30 chapters of the first canto or Prathama Kanda, known as Brahma Kanda of Brahma Vaivarta Purana, explains the origin of Tulasi. The title of the chapter is specifically Vedavati, Maya, Sita, Draupadi, and finally Devi Tulasi. In the lineage of Daksha Savarni Manu were born 5 different Savarnis. One was Brahma Savarni, another one was Dharma Savarni, third was Rudra Savarni, fourth was Deva Savarni, and fifth was Indra Savarni Manu. All of them are sons of Daksha Savarni Manu. They were all Parama Bhaktas of Bhagavan Vishnu. The son of the youngest fellow, namely Indra Savarni, was King Vrishabhadwaja. When all of them have been Bhagavan Vishnu's Parama Bhaktas, Vrishabhadwaja was very different. He was a great devotee of Paramashiva, so intense that Shiva considered his Bhakta Vrishabhadwaja to be more important than his own sons Ganesha and Kumara or Subramanya. Somehow the king Vrishabhadwaja never liked Vishnu. We don't know any reasons described in the Brahma Vaivarta Purana. And the king even discouraged any Vishnu Puja or Lakshmi Puja by anyone known to him. He even told people, If you want to live in my kingdom or around me, you shall not pray Vishnu. You will only be prostrating to Bhagavan Shiva. This orders caused lot of consternation in the minds of great devas and especially Surya Deva. So an infuriated Surya Deva cursed the king, that is Rajya-Lakshmi, would abandon him because of his dislike for Vishnu. If he disliked Vishnu, naturally Mahalakshmi will go away because she is actually adorning the chest of Mahavishnu. So he warned him, I'm cursing you because you have no respect for Vishnu, your Rajya-Lakshmi will abandon you. But when Shiva heard of this, in turn, he was very angry. He lifted his Trishula because it was his Bhakta who was cursed by Surya. So Shiva took his Trishula and ran behind Surya Deva. And Surya later sought refuge from his father Kashyapa Muni and then also went to Brahma. Because when Kashyapa Muni could not save Surya from the rage of Shiva, they both had to run to Brahma. But it was too tough for Brahma also. Brahma could not even handle Shiva when he was so enraged. So now it is the son, father Kashyapa Muni, and the grandfather Brahma. All three of them ran to seek protection from Mahavishnu. In the meantime, Shiva also reached there and came to where Mahavishnu was and told Mahavishnu that Vrishabhadwaja was his personal bhakta, and then it was seriously offended. Not only that he was offended, Surya Deva cursed the king for no fault of his. So Vishnu had to really hold the peace here, and that by the time Shiva reached Vaikuntha, a lot of time had already elapsed. So Mahavishnu was explaining, you were running after them. They were running in different directions. Finally, they all reached me. When you have reached here to Vaikuntha here now, remember how much time has elapsed in the process. And during this time lapse, the subject has become totally moot. Since not only Vrishabhadwaja lost his entire empire, but also died. Not only he died, but also his son Ratadwaja passed away. And Ratadwaja's later sons Dharmadwaja and Kushadwaja became intense bhaktas of me. And they are performing penance to Lakshmi Devi, who has given them everything back. Now the entire episode is moot. My dear friend Shiva, kindly ignore the whole episode. Vishnu further said that an Amsam of Mahalakshmi would soon be born to Malavati, the blessed wife of Kushadwaja. As soon as the baby was born, the child was repeating Vedas, and thereby the girl child that was born to Kushadwaja and Malati, his wife Malati, was named Vedavati because of the great knowledge that Amsama Mahalakshmi possessed as a child, reciting the entire Vedas. In course of time, Vedavati, namely the daughter of Kushadwaja and Malavati, took to severe tapas. There was an Akashavani or celestial voice at the time which pronounced that Vedavati in her next birth would become Mahavishnu's wife herself. On hearing this, Vedavati left for Gandhamadana Parvatam and intensified her tapas further towards that goal of reaching Mahavishnu as his consort. The demon Ravanasura spotted Vedavati sitting in tapas, and at that time he made advances to her. So Vedavati cursed Ravana not only for his misbehavior of coming to her and making advances to her, but she went further saying that she would sacrifice her life by jumping into Agni Kunda because of the nonsense that Ravaneshwara had done, and will be born again, but in her next birth would become responsible for the final destruction of Ravana. This is the background of the Ramayana Katha. Devi Sita was wedded to Sri Rama in the next birth. subsequent to all the events which I described now. To keep up the word of his father Dasharatha, Rama, along with Sita and Lakshmana, moved on to the forest that all of you know. And Agni Deva approached Rama as a Brahmana and conveyed that since the time for Sita's abduction of Ravana was imminent, is going to happen, he, Agni, has to replace Devi Sita with Maya Sita, and after the episode of Ravana's killing would be over, Agni would replace the real Sita with Maya or Chaya Sita at the time of imminent Agni Pariksha, which was also preordained. This is all written there in Brahma Vaivarta Purana. Vedavati alias Chaya Sita proceeded to perform tapas at Pushkar Kshetra in Dwapara Yuga and thereby became Draupadi as the daughter of Drupada Raja and further as the wife of Pandavas. Thus, Vedavati was blessed as a Trihayini. Vedavati is the only one who has the name Trihayini. Trihayini meaning she was born in 3 yugas. First it was in Satya Yuga. Then she came in Treta Yuga as Sita. And finally in Dwapara Yuga, she ended up coming as Draupadi. So the same Vedavati had taken so many roles in 3 different yugas, and thereby she was called Trihayini. The daughter of King Dharmadwaja was named Tulasi, and onlookers could not compare her beauty and charm of the child that she was instantly known as Tulana Smarta. Incomparable to anyone known, she was named as Tulasi. Being a Jatismara meaning with the memory of one's previous birth, Tulasi performed very strict tapas to Brahmadeva, who appeared before her and asked Tulasi to ask for a boon. Tulasi recalled that she was in her earlier birth a gopi by the same name as Tulasi in Goloka. That she was in Goloka as the closest companion of Devi Radha and was fond of a cowherd boy then called Govinda in the Rasa Samaja. And their friendship blossomed into passionate love that Devi Radha saw them together, cursed the lovers to be born into Martyaloka or Bhuloka, but also gave a redemption time period, assuring that Tulasi, on performing tapas to Brahma, would get the boon of marrying Bhagavan Sri Krishna in Dwapara Yuga. Brahma smiled and told Tulasi that the same Gopa was already born again with the Amsam of Sri Krishna, but as a Danava king called Shankachuda, residing in Samudra, who was invincible to even Paramashiva, and that he would be her husband initially, but however, in due course, Tulasi would wed Vishnu as his very dear wife when she would become the sacred tree or the shrub when the entire universe will start worshipping her as Vrindavani eternally, yuga after yuga after yuga. Devi Tulasi was thrilled at what Brahma revealed about the future course of events, but had a lurking fear of Radha Devi again as to whether she would allow this dreamlike future possible as predicted by Brahma. So Brahma teaches Tulasi Shodasopachara mantra and Puja Vidhi on Radha. Thereby, the procedure Radhopasana would take care of pleasing Devi Radha, and she will not interfere in Tulasi's goal of getting close to Paramatma and marrying Mahavishnu. So Tulasi was determined to please Radha, and thereby she performed incessant Radhopasana. This Radhopasana is also described in Brahma Vaivarta Purana. In course of time, Tulasi had dreamt of a handsome youth, and on the very next day, a yogi called Shankachuda landed at Badarivana, who practiced Sri Krishna mantra as the Kavacha. As Tulasi got his darshan at a common place, she was attracted to him and it was mutual. They exchanged pleasantries as also serious matters of Vedanta content, especially since both of them were Jatismaras who were completely aware of why they were born, what their previous births were, and how they were chasing one another. So they exchanged all the stories and decided that they have to be together. That is when Brahma appeared in front of them, encouraged them to become Dampatis by conducting their Gandharva Vivaham as the witness there. As I mentioned earlier, the best place to look for comprehensive and cohesive Puranic details describing the background of Shankachuda and Tulasi and how Tulasi became so sacred, etc., are the chapters 14 to 22 of Prakriti Kanda of Brahma Vaivarta Purana. Due to paucity of time, I will summarize the events in those 9 chapters. Sage Kashyapa was the son of Marichi and grandson of Lord Brahma. He married 13 daughters of the Daksha Prajapati. One of them was Danu. She had many powerful sons. That's why the name of those sons are Danavas. And one of them was Viprachitti. That is, Danu's son was Viprachitti. Viprachitti had a virtuous son, Damba, who was a great devotee of Mahavishnu. Damba had no son and upon the advice of Sukracharya, performed a great penance in the holy place of Pushkar for 100,000 years. While Damba was performing penance, a great light sprang up blazing from his head and spread everywhere. The worried gods, accompanied by Lord Brahma, approached Bhagavan Vishnu. Lord Vishnu said to them that Damba is his devotee, performing a severe penance, seeking for a son, and he will bestow him a boon. Then Bhagavan Vishnu went to Pushkar to grant a boon to Damba, who demanded an invincible son who would conquer all the 3 worlds. Damba did not ask for anything for himself. He says, I should have a son who should be invincible and who should be able to conquer the 3 worlds. This is the boon which I am seeking from you, O Vishnu. After some time, Damba's wife became pregnant and they had a son by name Shankachuda. In his previous birth, Shankachuda was Sridama or Sudama, which we described in detail in last session, the friend of Lord Krishna who had been cursed by Radha while in Goloka. One may wonder, we are talking about the activities of Vrindavana here, there is a Sridhama here, there is a Radha here, there are gopis here, and why are we talking of a parallel world of Goloka? Because what was happening in Goloka was again happening in Bhuloka, in Gokulam, in Yadava Kulam. So there is always a split image here you have to remember. In Goloka, the permanent goddess Radha gets upset with Sridhama or Sudama. He gets cursed and then he ends up coming as Shankachuda. Shankachuda performed a great penance for a long time in order to appease Brahma, who granted him the boon of being invincible to the gods. He also gave him the divine amulet of Krishna that yielded victory everywhere. Brahma told Shankachuda that he was destined to marry Tulasi, who was a chaste lady, and asked him to go to Badarikashrama and marry her. Shankachuda married Tulasi, and after some time, Sukracharya crowned him the king of the demons. Shankachuda fought against Indra along with his huge army, and gods fled the battlefield. Shankachuda occupied the throne of Indra and became the ruler of the world. All devas went to Lord Brahma for help, and at the advice of Brahma, they ran to Lord Vishnu once again. Here is where our story begins. Bhagavan Vishnu said to gods that he knows everything about Shankachuda, who is an amsam of him, and that they should seek the help of Lord Shiva. Lord Vishnu, along with all the gods, went to the abode of Shiva. Lord Shiva said to the god that he would kill Shankachuda. Lord Shiva sent the Lord of Gandharvas, namely Pushpadanta, as his messenger to Shankachuda to make peace with the gods. But Shankachuda said that he would wage a war against Lord Shiva. He is not going to take any of this settlement mode. On hearing Shankachuda's reply, Shiva became very infuriated. He ordered Virabhadra, Mahakali, Ganesha, Kartikeya, and all the greats to fight against Shankachuda. Brahmavaivarta describes the powerful war. Shiva himself set out with Indra and other gods. The Ashtabhairavas, the Ekadasha Rudras, Ashtavasus, Dwadasa Adityas, Surya, Soma, Kuvera, Yama, and all the planets, they also went along with Lord Shiva to wage a war against Shankachuda. A great battle was fought between the demons and the gods. Cutting off the heads of the demons, Mahakali drank the blood and devoured the flesh rapidly. The terrified demons ran off the battlefield. But Shankachuda could not be killed by any device. Lord Shiva himself was baffled. But he came forward to fight with him one-on-one, because that was the ultimate. Nobody could destroy him. But Brahmavaivarta Purana says, Shankachuda and Lord Shiva fought terribly for hundreds of years. As Lord Shiva seized his trident in order to kill Shankachuda, a celestial voice was heard. O Bhagavane Shiva, the limit imposed by the Vedas should not be disregarded, especially by you, since you make destiny. So there are two conditions. So you should not violate, O Lord Shiva, as long as Shankachuda wears the armor of Krishna, and as long as his wife Tulasi maintains her chastity, Shankachuda cannot be killed. On hearing this, Bhagavan Shiva said, so be it. Because it was ordained by Lord Shiva, it had to happen. What? Not only removal of the armor of Krishna from Shankachuda, but also Shankachuda's wife should lose chastity. Thereafter, at the request of Bhagavan Shiva, Lord Vishnu, disguised as a Brahmin, went to Shankachuda, demanded his armor by way of alms. Shankachuda, being a noble soul, he would never say no. You will remember that this is going to repeat itself later when it comes to Karna also. So here Vishnu goes, disguised as a Brahmin, demands the armor of Shankachuda, which is protecting him, simply by way of alms. And Shankachuda says, granted, take it. Even at this stage, Shiva could not near Shankachuda. Armor or no armor, Shiva tried for hundreds of years more to fight him. Nothing was happening. And then what happened was the next step. Vishnu then put on that armor and disguised himself as Shankachuda. By simple design of the armor, Vishnu appeared like Shankachuda and went to Tulasi. Tulasi was charmed, thinking that it was her husband who had come to home. Lord Vishnu outraged the modesty of Tulasi when she offered herself to Vishnu, presuming him to be her spouse, Shankachuda. Purana goes in detail about this. As soon as Tulasi realized that her chastity was violated, Lord Shiva, here on the battlefield, chopped off the head of Shankachuda, who already lost the armor of Krishna, which otherwise protected him. Infuriated by the violation of her chastity, Tulasi cursed Bhagavan Vishnu to become a rock. This is the final straw. Tulasi was so infuriated. She had such a great power as a chaste woman. She cursed Bhagavan Vishnu. You may be Bhagavan Vishnu, but you violated me. Originally, I wanted you to be my husband. You wanted to give a different route to me through Brahma. So I went through the route, but I am the wife of Sankachuda. But what happens? You come deceptively like Sankachuda, and then I offer myself unto you. But this was wrong. This is against Dharma. Thereby, since you violated it, you shall become a rock. There are some beautiful passages in Brahma Vaivarta Purana in the second canto, 21st chapter. At least there are half a dozen slokas. We will listen to those slokas when Tulasi gets so angry and admonishes Vishnu and curses him to become a rock. I will also provide the meaning in English. So when the music is going on, you will be able to appreciate the meaning also concurrently. That will save us some time. He nath te dayanasti pashana sadrisasya cha he nath te dayanasti pashana sadrisasya cha chalena dharma bhangena mama swami tvaya gataha He nath te dayanasti pajana sadrisasya cha chalena dharma bhangena mama swami tvaya gataha pashana sadrisastvam cha dayahino yata prabho dayahino Yata Prabhu Tasmat Bhajana Rupatvam Bhuvi Deva Bhavaduna Bhuvi Deva Bhavaduna Bhuvi Deva Bhavaduna Ye vadanti daya sindhum Tvante Brahantana Shamshaya Ye vadanti daya sindhum Tvante Brahantana Shamshaya Bhakto vina aparadena Pararte cha katam hada Sarvatma tvam cha sarvajna Sarvatma tvam cha sarvajna Na janasi paravyatayam Atastvam yeka janushi swameva Atastvam yeka janushi swameva vismarishyasi Ityuktva cha mahasadhvi nipatya sharane hare Brusham ruroda shokarta vilalapa mugu As you saw in the slides, Tulasi laments and she complains to Bhagavan Vishnu that he was heartless and he is supposed to be an embodiment of compassion, but he showed no compassion since he behaved as though he was a stone. He decided to defile her chastity and that too deceitfully. In the process, he also killed her husband. Therefore, Tulasi said, since you are stone-hearted and devoid of compassion, you shall take the form of a stone on earth. And of course, she advances additional arguments, saying those are the people who call you compassion incarnate or ocean of mercy are totally misled. Why did you kill a devotee who completely depended on you and had your kavacham, and he was sinless? He committed no crime. You killed simply because somebody wanted him to be killed? And then what happened was, finally, she could no longer fight Mahavishnu with words. She fell at the feet of Bhagavan crying, and she was filled with grief. By then, Lord Shiva reached there. He enlightened the lamenting Tulasi by telling her that she had performed severe penance in her previous birth to beget Lord Vishnu as her husband, and that could not be accomplished unless she is able to cast off her body and her temporary husband, namely Shankachuda, also throws away his body and becomes one with Paramatman. So Tulasi, after casting off her body, would become the sacred river Gandaki and then the Tulasi plant. Lord Shiva told her, as a result of your curse, Bhagavan Vishnu, because you are a Pativrata, Bhagavan Vishnu had to really take the curse and behave like a stone. He would become a rock. He will assume the form of a rock on the banks of river Gandaki where you are going to be. And because of the sanctity provided for the rock in your waters, Bhagavan Vishnu shall be worshipped as Salagrama for the rest of the Yuga. And the Yuga is to continue. So Gandaki has become a very sacred river because of Tulasi, because Tulasi and Gandaki are one and the same. On the rock, namely Paramatma Mahavishnu, who had to be born as a rock in Gandaki, becomes worshipable as Salagrama. The conch shells in the oceans, that's the next one, shall be made from the bones of husband Shankachuda who was destroyed. So Mahashiva says, Shankachuda's bones will become conch shells and they will become worthy to be offered as final offering to Lord Shiva as part of the prayers to him. So he who worships the Tulasi plant, the conch shell for invoking Lord Shiva and the Salagrama together shall be an enlightened devotee of the Lord. Tapasi tvaya kritam sadvi madarte bharate chiro tvadarte sankachudasya tvadarte sankachudasya chakara suchiro tapasi tvaya kritam sadvi madarte bharate chiram tvadarte sankachudasya chakara suchiram tapaha kritva tvam kamini kami vijaharacha tatpalat aduna datum uchito tavaiva tapasappalam idam shariram tyaktva cha divyam degam vidaya cha rase me ramaya sardam tvam rama chadrishi bhava iyam tanurnadi rupa Gandaki tija visruta puta supunyada rudam punya bhavatu bharadeye tava kesha samuhasya punya vriksha bhavantviti tulasi kesha sambhuta tulasi tija visrutaya Trilokeshu cha pushpanam patranam deva pujana pradana rupa tulasi bhavishyati varanane It is now Bhagavan Vishnu's turn. He is now giving her a big sermon and promise that we will be listening just now in the form of several slokas, and the meaning also will be provided there. Bhagavan Vishnu said, O chaste Tulasi, you have performed such great tapas in this Bharatvarsham for such a long time to achieve me. And on the other hand, Sankachuda had also performed tapas for a long time to achieve you. You should remember that. That is the reason that you had to be first married to him. At the same time, I cannot forget that you have been really aiming all your tapas to attain me. As a result of those, the enthusiastic Sankachuda got you. Now I have considered it necessary and appropriate to award you the fruit of the tapas that you had done earlier to reach me. So thereby I put an end to the situation so that you can put an end to the present body. You take to your divine form, then come to Goloka as Lakshmi in the company of Lord Vishnu. For the time being, your body will now take the form of Gandaki river, which will become very auspicious for the people who take a bath there for salvation. Besides, your hair will become the trees surrounding. Since the trees will be born of your hair, they will be known by the name Tulasi. In other words, Tulasi that we see as small plants here now, it used to be Tulasi trees. Those trees were nothing but the great Tulasamma's hair, which was growing around Gandaki and spread all over the Bharatam. And that is the Tulasi forest, which subsequently became so sacred. Finally, Mahavishnu says, O Tulasi, having the beautiful face in all the three worlds, the leaves of Tulasi will be considered to be the best and extremely meritorious when compared with any other leaves or flowers which are offered to me. Not only to me, to any gods. Tulasi will definitely surpass all other leaves and flowers when any prayers are offered to any gods. And of course, after this, Mahavishnu extols the virtues of Tulasi and how important is Tulasi in everybody's life in all the yugas to follow. And these are all completely detailed from slokas 35 to 105 in the same chapter 21 of second canto. Chapter 21, 35 to 105 is Mahavishnu's extolling of the virtues of Tulasi. And I will give you only a small sample of it. Slokas 97 to 103 will be now given as musical version of this. At the end of these slokas, it will be a good place to stop and continue, because in the coming session, important events will be described that will include the moksham of Sankachuda and the reason who was he in fact, and why was he an invincible Amsa of Mahavishnu. After addressing that briefly, we will go further to Narayana Tirtha's opera in the next session. Shanagramam cha Tulasi, Shanagramam cha Tulasi, Shadgam Yekatraye cha Yo Rakshati Mahajnani, Sabhavet Shri Haripriyaha Sakridevagi Yo Yasyam Virya Danam Karotiyah Tadvichede Tasya Dukkam Bhavet Yeva Parasparam Tumpriya Sankachudasya Cha Ekamanvantaravadi Shadagena Sardam Tvad Vedaha Kevalam Dukkadastava Ityuktva Shri Hari Tam Cha Virarama Cha Narada Sacha Degam Parityajya दिव्यरूपं ददारः दिव्यरूपं दधारः यथा श्री च तथा सापि यथा श्री च तथा सा चापि उवाच हरिवक्षसि प्रजगामतया सार्धं वैकुण्ठं कमलापतिः लक्ष्मी सरस्वती गंगा तुलसी चापि नारद हरे प्रिय चतस्रः च बभूरिः ईश्वरस्य च सद्यस्तद्येह जाता च बभूव गण्डकी नदी हरे अंशेन शैलस्य तत्तीरे पुण्यदो नृणाम् नारायण 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 हरे कृष्णा नारायण 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 हरे कृष्णा गुरुवायूरप्पा